Someone you love is going to die. You already know this. And when it happens, you will do something strange. You will gather. You will speak their name out loud. You will place flowers on a box in the ground. You might light a candle. You might wear a specific color, and you will feel somewhere deep in your chest that all of this matters enormously. But here's the thing no one tells you at the funeral. Every single ritual you perform that day is older than language, older than cities, older than agriculture. The real answer to why you grieve the way you do is far stranger than you ever imagined. Go back 300,000 years. Your ancestors crouching at the edge of a shallow pit. The body of someone they loved has been placed inside, not thrown, placed carefully. On their side, knees pulled toward the chest as if sleeping. Around the body, someone has scattered red ochre, a powder ground from iron-rich stone that bleeds the color of blood. Nobody taught them to do this. There was no tradition yet. And yet, across every continent where early humans left traces, this same gesture appears again and again. Red ochre on the dead. Why? Archaeologist Francesco D'Erico has spent decades studying these burial sites. What he found was not accidental. The ochre was not random debris. It was deliberately applied, sometimes in thick layers, sometimes shaped into patterns. His conclusion was uncomfortable for a lot of people. These were not just burials. They were ceremonies. Abstract thought, applied to loss. The first religious act in human history may not have been worship. It may have been grief. Your brain is doing something right now that it has always done. It is refusing to accept that a person can simply stop. Neuroscientist Antonio Damasio calls this the somatic marker. Your body and mind are woven together so tightly that the disappearance of someone you know creates a physical rupture. A literal gap in the map your brain holds of the world. You do not just feel sad. Your brain is genuinely disoriented. It keeps reaching for a presence that is no longer there. Ancient humans felt this too, and they did the only thing that made sense. They built a bridge. That is what a burial is. A bridge, not between the living and the dead, between the unbearable and the bearable. When you lower something into the ground with care, with ritual, with attention, you are telling your nervous system a story. This was real. This mattered. This is finished now. Without that story, the brain stays open, waiting, hunting for the missing person in every shadow. Now look at the Neanderthals. For a long time, scientists assumed Neanderthals were too primitive to understand death the way modern humans do. Then they found Shanidar Cave in northern Iraq. Inside, the skeleton of a Neanderthal man, roughly 60,000 years old, surrounded by flower pollen so concentrated it could only have been placed deliberately. Someone had collected armfuls of wildflowers, grape hyacinth, hollyhock, groundsel, and laid them around the body. Researcher Ralph Selecki, who excavated the site in the 1950s, called it the flower burial. And it changed the entire conversation about what it means to be human. Neanderthals mourned. They decorated their dead. They cared. But here is the counterintuitive part. Grief itself, the raw animal wailing kind, is not a uniquely human thing. Jane Goodall documented chimpanzees sitting beside their dead for hours, refusing to leave. Elephants returned to the bones of their companions year after year, touching them with their trunks. Dolphins have been observed carrying the bodies of their calves at the surface of the water for days. Grief, in its most primitive form, is a feature, not a flaw. It is the cost of attachment, and attachment kept your ancestors alive. You needed your group. You needed to know when a member of that group was gone. The pain was the signal. What ancient humans did, the thing that made them different from any other animal, was take that raw grief and transform it into meaning, They did not just sit beside the dead. They asked why. They imagined where the dead person went. They invented answers. And those answers, invisible realms, spirit worlds, the idea that the self continues after the body fails, those ideas became the scaffolding for everything that followed. Religion, art, culture. The concept of the afterlife was not born from comfort. It was born from cognitive refusal to accept that a conscious person could simply end. Consider the burial site at Sungir in Russia, dated to roughly 34,000 years ago. 2 children, buried head-to-head, covered in more than 10,000 mammoth ivory beads that would have taken an estimated 10,000 hours to carve. Someone spent years preparing those beads, not for living people, for the dead. This was not practical. This was theological. This was the first statement humanity ever made that the dead deserved extravagance, that the afterlife, whatever it was, required preparation. Anthropologist Randall White, who studied the Sungir burials extensively, argued that this level of grave goods suggests a fully developed belief system, not a primitive one, but a complex layered cosmology built entirely around what happens when you die. And now, think about your own funeral traditions. The expensive casket, the folded flag, the 3 volleys of a rifle, the coins placed on the eyes in ancient Greece, the boat set on fire in Viking tradition, the towers of silence where Zoroastrians left their dead for vultures to return to the sky. Every single one of these rituals shares a DNA with that child buried in beads at Sungir. Every one of them is saying the same thing. This person mattered enough to spend resources on, even in death, especially in death. Here is something that might disturb you slightly. Some of the earliest evidence of symbolic behavior in humans is found not in cave paintings or tools, but in how they handled the bodies of the dead. At a site called Cueva de los Aviones in Spain, researchers found perforated shells, jewelry, dated to 115,000 years ago. But at burial sites of similar age, researchers found the same shells, the same ochre, the same deliberate placement. The impulse to mark a person with meaning, to say this body is more than matter, may be the first truly human thought anyone ever had. Your brain, the brain you are using right now to absorb this, was built in part by that thought. The people who survived were not just the strongest or the fastest. They were the ones who could hold the idea of a lost companion in their mind long enough to mourn properly, to learn from the loss, to warn others, to preserve knowledge across the gap that death creates. Grief made you social. Ritual made you coherent. The funeral is not a modern invention dressed in ancient symbolism. It is an ancient technology that civilization was built on top of. So the next time you find yourself standing at the edge of a grave, or lighting a candle, or speaking the name of someone gone out loud into a quiet room, understand what you are actually doing. You are not performing a quaint cultural custom. You are completing a circuit that has been firing for 300,000 years. You are doing what the first human did when they crouched over a body in a shallow pit and pressed red powder into the ground with their hands. You are refusing to let meaning die with the body. You are telling the universe that this person existed and that it matters. The flowers you placed on the grave today are 60,000 years old.